Today we're looking at this war of mine. Let's set it up. This war of mine combines pressure luck, worker placement, and real-life themes to create a game about surviving a modern-day civil war. How is it played? Each turn is a day that's broken down into 5 different parts. Morning. In the morning, there's a little bit of admin, including an event that is chosen for the day. These are normally bad, but it can have good side effects as well. Day is when the bulk of the worker placement happens in this game. In it, the board is your house, and each of the spots on here covered by a card is a particular room that you could potentially build something new in. Or if you clear it out, you may get some items from that particular thing. Furniture usually gives you wood, etc. These are resources that you use to build new items and upgrade your house and the locations in it. The amount of actions you have is limited though by the ailments that particular character may have. If they're hungry or fatigued or miserable, that's going to limit the amount of actions that they have. This is one of the driving factors of how you attack this game. Dusk is another administrative phase of the turn. During this portion, you select which characters are going to get food and water, and those who don't suffer the consequences. Evening is the next phase that consists the majority of the game. During this portion, there are 2 main things that happen: scavenging and night raids. First, you choose which characters are going to sleep, or scavenge, or guard. When you go scavenging, you create a deck of exploration cards. This deck is based upon the location that you go to. The further away it goes, the less time you have to explore, and hence the deck is smaller. The exploration cards tell you if you've found something or if someone has found you. During this portion, you may have to roll for noise. If your roll is less than the number on the roll for noise track, then you run into a resident. You grab a card, you may have an event that happens from the Book of Story Tales. In that book, you may have to roll to see what happens based upon your choices or certain situations that you're in and items that you may have. This is where the thematic portion of the game really notches up a level, as this is where the hard moral choices take place. Then the night raid phase happens. This is thematically happening simultaneously while people are scavenging. Basically, you draw a card to determine if someone attacks your home while you are gone. Hopefully you have someone guarding it to keep them from stealing stuff or breaking your items, or worse, injuring the people that are still there. The final phase is dawn, and during this time, you will heal your people by giving them medicine or bandages, but you also take a fate card. This determines if those medicines and bandages helped the people out, or if people got sicker, if they did not have any medicine or bandages. After this, it all starts again on the next day. Let's look at some shelf stats. So this game is the same size as a Ticket to Ride box, so it's very standard in its size. The game takes up a good space of a 3x3 playing area, as you can see on this mat here. However, you will need room for your tokens to the side. Luckily, the amount of space needed does not change based upon the number of players that you have, as each player does not get a separate character. All the characters are shared between everybody, whether or not you have 3 or 1. Now the time it takes to set this up is a little bit of time. It took me about 10.5 minutes to set this up. Now I did not shuffle all the cards, I shuffled them as I continued to play, but if you shuffled them before, that could add to the time, or if you shuffled them from your last game, they'd already be set. Let's talk about the components. In this, they do have a component tray, and it does work pretty good for the items that they have. The components themselves are pretty good. They are miniatures, they're not the best sculpts, I would say, but they do get the point across, and you can tell who they are based upon the character cards as well. Don't get too attached to them though, as they probably will not last long. I did think that the cards were kind of thin, and you do a lot of shuffling and a lot of dealing. Since they are mostly black cards, they could start to show wear and tear easily based upon your usage. You may want to sleeve them due to that, since black comes off easy on cards, it seems like. As far as the board itself, it does have two different sides, which affects the difficulty, but it is a dark board, much like the rest of it. And so there were times that until I got used to it, I could not tell that there was a wall between certain rooms, and this caused some issues that, you know, may have affected gameplay to a certain degree, but just keep an eye on that. Now let's talk about colorblind issues. Besides the game being dark color-wise, which as a colorblind person, that did not bother me. I think that could affect a lot of people besides people that are colorblind. As I said, I had trouble determining where walls were a couple times in the house. Nothing too bad, but it is very dark, which could be an issue for some. The other thing is that the improvement cards, there's a little color code in the corner, which are red and green, I think. I could not tell the difference between them, and I did need assistance to determine which were the starter pile and which was the extra pile. I got used to it over time, and I could kind of figure out which ones they were based upon the names of them as they were upgrades, etc. But there was a couple which I did not know if they would be in the starter pile or the improvement pile for later due to the color on there. So be aware of that. Overall though, besides that small thing, which could be easy to find out initially, I didn't have any other issues in regards to color itself. The rules for this were very easy to teach. Initially, the rule book that they have is basically a phase by phase, step by step, to go through your initial day of the game. And then you just start again the next day. Sounds good, and it works good when you're learning. You just do what it says. However, when you go to learn or play future times, I would prefer to have something that you could reference easier that shows all your available options during each day and what's coming up. Just a bullet point list is fine. Just a round summary of what you need to do. This would be great. There are additional rules in the storybook that aren't in the initial rule book. However, finding those, they're not located all together, and so you have to remember where they are based upon notes in the little journal book, the initial rule book. If they had broken those out separately to an additional small book, I think it would have been much better, but it's a small thing. Now, what are some pros? For this game, the theme is definitely a pro for me. It may be a con for others. This is about surviving a war, a civil war during modern day times. It's depressing. It's not a fun situation. However, it is a different change of pace, and it is very adult in its nature. And it really makes you think about things that could be happening today. The choices you have to make from the story portions are agonizing. Do you potentially try to save a child's life knowing that it's going to put your characters at risk and potentially kill them and ruin the entire game? Do you sacrifice that child to do this? That's the moral dilemma in this game, and it brings this through the story very well. The worker placement mechanics on this are pretty standard. However, the amount of action points you get is what makes that portion of the game difficult and intense. The status of your characters in regards to their health, their misery, their hunger level, those things affecting your action points really put a twist on this, because what you would do normally are going to be radically changed by the amount of action points you have, and the fact that what you need to do to increase those action points for someone is going to delay what you really need to do for the whole group. Do you decide to sacrifice a character for the betterment of the group, knowing that they're gonna die and that's going to affect the rest of your people's morale? It's another one of those interesting choices. Now let's look at the negatives. Obviously the theme could be one of them, and probably the major one for a lot of people. It's not a fun game, it's very depressing, but it is very satisfying to overcome those. But if you cannot get around this theme, then stay away from this. Randomness is also an issue with this game. Everything has to do with the luck of the draw or the roll of the dice. There's very little things you can do to mitigate this. You may have a couple of choices, and that can be affected by items that you have. But the fact you may not have those is based upon randomness of other items. Keep that in mind. Now the length of this can be long as well. The box says 45 minutes to 120 minutes, and that probably just depends on how quickly you die. The initial scenario is pretty long, but there are a couple of shorter scenarios in the box. And as is the way with these, there are a couple of expansions which adds more campaign information and storybook, but also multiple scenarios that change up what you're doing and affect the time of the game as well. Final thoughts. I found this War of Mine to be a difficult game that was worth tackling. Based upon true life situations, I understand that you can't always win. Winning isn't even the best word for it. Surviving is. If you allow yourself to think of this as a person and not as a gamer, then your morals will be tested. What is best for the story may not be the best for your characters. This is the situation in this War of Mine. You are not the hero. You are one of the forgotten victims in this War of Mine. If you are interested in an adult-themed game that can be punishing but very rewarding if you overcome the challenges, take a look at this. However, if you do not like randomness, luck of the draw, or this theme, stay far away from it. Anyway, that's this War of Mine. My name is Joe. This is Dice of Wrath. Please like and subscribe below, and we'll see you the next time.